Hello everyone, and welcome to my Young and the Restless official 24 channel. I hope everyone is having a wonderful day. Before we begin, please hit the subscribe button and give this video a thumbs up. Super couple tested, launch party drama, and fake BFF disaster. According to spoilers for The Young and the Restless, there may be a super couple put to the test, a phony BFF catastrophe, and some drama at the launch party. Let's talk about the surprises that will be coming on the CBS soap opera, since there will be some excitement in Genoa City soon. 1. Abbott Communications' eagerly anticipated launch party is a dangerous venture. As Sally Spectra has been finalizing the details, Abbott Communications is finally getting ready for their launch celebration. Billy Abbott, who has agreed to let Sally oversee the new media company, wants her to make a big impression. Billy fully expects to take over Chancellor eventually, so there's no use in postponing the inevitable. But if this launch party doesn't go as planned, disaster might be on the horizon. Since Kane Ashby has shown that he is unreliable, we couldn't rule out his ruining the celebration. Kane might carry out Billy's insider scheme after Jack Abbott declined to make a deal with him. Kane might retaliate and target Abbott Communications in the process. Will Sally and her launch party be held accountable? 2. Nick's attempt to make friends with Kane can go horribly wrong. Regarding Nick Newman, he will continue to follow Victor Newman's instructions and maintain a false friendship with Kane. Nick will make every effort to form a coalition and divert Kane's focus from a takeover at Chancellor to one at Jabbo. However, there is no assurance that Nick will be able to persuade Kane that they are now best friends. Nick's change in attitude will raise suspicions and may make Kane more cautious. If Kane realizes Nick is using him and retaliates, things might go very wrong. It will be fascinating to see if Kane can be astute about this and keep the Newmans guessing because he wasn't born yesterday. 3. The marriage between Victor and Nikki is put to the ultimate test. Meanwhile, all the corporate instability will put a well-liked Y&R super couple to the test. The love between Victor and Nikki Newman has endured well throughout the years, but they are about to experience yet another setback. It is clear that Nikki disapproves of Victor's scheme to blame Jack and his family business. Nikki believes that the Abbotts don't deserve it, but Victor doesn't agree and will have no trouble feeding them to the wolves. The way things work out with Kane could cause tension in Nikki and Victor's relationship. Victor's marriage to Nikki may deteriorate the more he causes problems for Jack and Jabbo. Stay in for updates on all the chaos, as spoilers for The Young and the Restless indicate that multiple storylines will feature shocking revelations and contentious exchanges. Kane's hacking scandal. Is Phyllis being set up? As Kane's hacking disaster worsens, Phyllis finds herself in the middle of the chaos. But is she the ideal scapegoat? If Kane Ashby's plan fails, Phyllis Summers may be arrested, according to spoilers and updates for The Young and the Restless. Is it possible that Phyllis will be the fall guy and wind up in jail? Phyllis had been desperate for a new direction following the chaos of captivity. After all the chaos she endured while in captivity at the clinic, Phyllis has been longing for a path ahead. Phyllis has not yet entirely dealt with the enormous trauma she endured at the hands of Martin Laurent. Phyllis is putting herself in danger by getting involved with Kane's most recent endeavor rather than confronting her history. Daniel Romalotti Jr. undoubtedly raised the alarm about Kane's ludicrous scheme for dominance in Genoa City in the Y&R episode that aired on August 12. Daniel advised Phyllis to leave right away before Kane traps her in a situation that could turn her into a target. When it comes to her son, Phyllis is playing with fire, but she won't listen. Daniel believes that Phyllis is teasing danger and will undoubtedly suffer repercussions unlike anything she has ever experienced. He may have a point when he advises Phyllis to break off her relationship with Kane and look for another business opportunity. However, Phyllis is the kind of person who defies reasonable counsel and obstinately maintains her position. For this very reason, she will push forward with her collaboration with Kane, probably infiltrating every company he has his sights set on. Kane is depending on Phyllis to make good use of her abilities, but if she commits crimes on his behalf and gets into trouble, this may be problematic. Amanda Sinclair faces a difficult decision, as Phyllis can be arrested and used as a scapegoat for Kane. When everything finally falls apart around Phyllis, it's easy to imagine her getting arrested. If Kane tries to place the blame on Phyllis as part of his complex plan, she may find herself in serious difficulty and even go to jail. By implying that Phyllis used deceptive methods on her own initiative, Kane might be attempting to preserve his own reputation. If Kane betrays Phyllis in this way, Amanda Sinclair will have to decide whether to support her boss or leave him to save Phyllis. Anyway, according to Y&R spoilers, Kane will be changing his strategy as events go, so watch for the next surprising disclosures and bold deeds. The romance between Victoria and Nate intensifies, but Claire schemes retaliation. According to teasers for The Young and the Restless, Victoria Newman is mourning the death of one of her greatest loves. Nate Hastings' support for Victoria is intriguing because of it. In the months before he passed away, Cole Howard, a kind man, came to terms with his restored family. However, Peck's character did not become Victoria's husband for a third time. She will be receptive to another decent man because she is unmarried and has experienced unanticipated grief as a result of the shock of Cole's passing. Nate fits that description and seems to be disillusioned with Audra Charles, who he made sure to convey his condolences to upon Cole's death. Newman, Claire willing to retaliate. Claire Newman has always been inferior in Audra's eyes. Because of the horrible upbringing she endured at the hands of her father's aunt, who was also her great-aunt, Claire frequently exhibits the traits of Audra. Claire was loved by Jordan Howard, but in a distorted and deceptive manner. As loyal fans remember, Jordan raised Claire as her own after stealing her from Victoria and Cole at birth. Claire was informed that the Newman family and her parents needed to be killed because they had deserted her. The most important factor in Jordan's demise, however, was Claire's ability to free herself from his grip. Claire is going to use the street fighting style she picked up from Jordan against Audra, who is trying to court Kyle Abbott with his seemingly dormant interest. Newman, Victoria self-centering. Victoria was progressing rather well. At Newman Enterprises, everything was as good as it could be. She was happy with the other top spot her father offered his firstborn kid, even though he did return to the large chair. Victoria's and Cole's hearts were filled with unending delight upon realizing Eve's amazing return to life. Victoria's world was completely reset by their daughter, who took her mother's maiden name, Newman, but kept her first name, Claire. Cole's return to Genoa City, Wisconsin, thrilled Heiner's character as well. It appeared the couple would get married a third time, either later this year or early next year. Then, while on a business trip abroad, Cole got Legionnaire's disease and quickly recovered. Victoria must thus regain her center. The heartbreak of Nate Hastings provides an opportunity. Nate did not want Audra to do business with Victor once more. However, she explained that he would pay Vibrante, and she also kept the fact that she was courting Kyle in return for money a secret from Nate. After Audra hinted that anything had happened with Kyle in France, Claire was likely to ignore her, even though it would have been difficult. Then, in the bright daylight, Claire noticed Audra and Kyle sharing a kiss at society. Now that she has witnessed Audra's actions, Erin's character is completely driven to exact retribution by telling Nate. Since Audra will have to defend herself to Nate as a result of that kind of retribution attempt, she will naturally get disillusioned and really question if she truly feels the same way about him as she does about Kyle. The buzz in Genoa City had been steadily building for weeks. Everyone knew that Abbott Communications' launch party was going to be a spectacle, not because it was the first big event for the new media company, but because it was already shrouded in potential disaster. Sally Spectra had been pulling late nights, going over seating charts, refining guest lists, and triple-checking every detail of the decor. For her, this launch was more than an assignment. It was a make-or-break opportunity to prove to the Abbotts, and to herself, that she belonged at the helm of something big. Billy Abbott, for all his charm and laissez-faire attitude, had made it clear in his own subtle way that she had one shot to impress him. Billy was already thinking long-term. He could see himself eventually returning to Chancellor, with Lily Winters either at his side or begrudgingly watching him from the sidelines. Either way, the launch of Abbott Communications was part of a bigger chess game, and he was moving his pieces accordingly. What Billy hadn't counted on, however, was Kane Ashby's growing involvement, or rather, interference. Kane had been circling the edges of several business empires like a hawk looking for a wounded rabbit. After Jack Abbott refused to make a deal with him, Kane's resentment had curdled into something darker. There were whispers in the corners of society and glances exchanged at crimson lights, the kind of social static that only meant one thing in Genoa City: someone was plotting. Kane didn't like being underestimated, and he was quietly aligning himself with anyone who could help him tip the balance. That's where Nick Newman came in, reluctantly. Under orders from Victor, Nick had been tasked with befriending Kane of fake friendship, as he saw it with the goal of redirecting Kane's ambitions away from Chancellor and toward Jabbo. Nick's father framed it as a necessary tactic to protect the Newman interests, but Nick could already feel the ethical discomfort settling in. Still, he played along, inviting Kane for drinks, offering him insider gossip, pretending to value his opinions. But Kane wasn't a fool. He noticed the sudden warmth from Nick, the two friendly shoulder claps, the invitations to lunches that always seemed to circle back to talk about Jabbo's vulnerabilities. And the more Nick pushed, the more Kane's instincts screamed that he was being handled. A dangerous thought began to take root. If Newman wanted to play games, Kane would play harder. Meanwhile, the drama wasn't limited to corporate chess matches. Across town, Victor and Nikki Newman were stepping into yet another marital minefield. Victor's latest plan to undermine Jack Abbott using Kane as a destabilizing force was something Nikki couldn't support. She saw it as petty and unnecessary, especially considering the fragile peace that existed between the families. "They don't deserve this," she told him in a low, firm voice one evening at the ranch. But Victor, with that steely resolve that had both enchanted and infuriated her for decades, disagreed entirely. To him, business was war, and sentimentality was a liability. The more Nikki pushed back, the more entrenched Victor became, and the strain began to ripple through their marriage. Then came the Phyllis Summers complication. Phyllis, fresh from her own whirlwind of personal crises including her traumatic captivity at Martin Laurent's clinic, was desperate for a fresh start. But instead of playing it safe, she found herself drawn into Kane's orbit. It started with small favors, a little research here, some networking introductions there. But soon, she was waist-deep in Kane's latest scheme, one that involved digital infiltration, whispered rumors about hacking, and strategic sabotage. Daniel Romalotti Jr. saw the danger instantly. "Mom, this is Kane we're talking about," he warned during a tense conversation at Crimson Lights. "The guy doesn't do anything unless it benefits him. You stick around, and you'll be the one holding the bag when it all blows up." Phyllis, being Phyllis, bristled at the idea of being told what to do. She insisted she knew exactly what she was getting into, that she could handle herself. But Daniel wasn't convinced. And deep down, Phyllis herself had moments of doubt quickly smothered by her desire to stay relevant and prove her worth in the ever-shifting Genoa City power game. Amanda Sinclair's name began to surface in hushed conversations. If Phyllis got caught, and there was every reason to believe Kane would happily throw her under the bus if it served his needs, Amanda might be forced to choose between her professional ties and her loyalty to Phyllis. Amanda knew better than most that Kane's charm could be weaponized, and she wasn't about to let a client or a friend walk into a trap without a fight. Still, she could already feel the tug-of-war approaching. As all of this brewed, Victoria Newman was dealing with heartbreak of a different kind. The loss of Cole Howard had left her untethered in ways she hadn't expected. Cole's return to Genoa City had brought hope, even the possibility of a third marriage, only for it to be ripped away by his sudden illness and death. In the aftermath, Nate Hastings had become an anchor for her, offering quiet support and understanding. But while Victoria was finding solace in Nate, another Newman, Claire, was watching from the sidelines, taking stock of her enemies. Audra Charles was at the top of that list. The two women had a history of friction, born from Audra's condescension and amplified by Claire's traumatic upbringing at the hands of Jordan Howard. Jordan's twisted love had taught Claire to be calculating, to look for leverage, and to strike when the opportunity was right. When Claire caught Audra kissing Kyle Abbott outside society in broad daylight, she knew she'd been handed a weapon. Audra's relationship with Nate was already shaky. This would shatter it. And Claire wasn't just thinking about payback, she was thinking about positioning herself in the Newman hierarchy, about proving she wasn't the naive outsider some still saw her as. The launch party became the nexus where all these threads began to converge. The Abbott communications offices were transformed into a glittering event space, with crystal chandeliers, sleek black and gold decor, and a champagne tower that seemed almost comically oversized. Guests arrived in their finest, cameras flashed, and Sally worked the room with the practiced ease of someone who knew the success of the evening depended on her keeping every conversation upbeat and every potential disaster invisible. But the undercurrents were impossible to ignore. Kane arrived late, his eyes scanning the crowd like a man casing a bank. Nick, playing his assigned role, greeted him warmly and pulled him into a corner to discuss future collaborations. Across the room, Nikki stood beside Jack, both watching Victor like hawks, waiting for the moment he'd make his move. Phyllis floated through the party, equal parts social butterfly and covert operative, quietly observing interactions and slipping bits of overheard information into her mental vault. Daniel's warning echoed in her mind, but she pushed it aside, focusing instead on impressing Kane, and maybe outmaneuvering him. Claire made her entrance with calculated timing, waiting until the room had settled into its rhythm before arriving, perfectly styled and radiating a confidence that belied her intentions. She spotted Audra and Nate in conversation, saw the faint tension in Nate's posture, and smiled to herself. By the end of the night, she planned to tip the first domino. The drama began subtly, a whispered argument between Nikki and Victor near the bar, a sharp look from Amanda to Kane, a flicker of panic in Sally's eyes when she realized one of the digital displays had gone dark. Then, as if the universe had decided to amplify the chaos, everything started happening at once. A tech glitch caused the main presentation screen to flicker, displaying what looked suspiciously like internal Abbott communications documents. Guests gasped, phones came out, and Sally nearly dropped her champagne flute. Kane stood nearby, feigning confusion, but the slight curl at the corner of his mouth told a different story. Nick stepped in quickly, trying to play damage control, but his closeness to Kane in that moment only fueled suspicion among the Abbotts. Across the room, Claire sidled up to Nate, murmuring just loudly enough for him to hear, "You might want to ask Audra about her afternoon with Kyle." The impact was immediate. Nate's expression tightened, his gaze snapped to Audra, and Claire walked away without another word, satisfied that the seed had been planted. By the time the night ended, the launch party was less a celebration and more a battlefield. Sally was already calculating how to spin the disaster into something salvageable. Victor and Nikki left separately, their argument unresolved. Nick realized Kane had not only seen through his act but had probably used him to further his own agenda. Phyllis caught a glimpse of herself in the mirrored elevator doors and, for the first time, wondered if she was standing on the edge of something she couldn't talk her way out of. And somewhere in the shadows outside, Claire watched the guests disperse, her mind already working through her next move. The fake friendships, the corporate sabotage, the personal betrayals, it was all just the beginning. Genoa City had survived many storms, but this one was shaping up to be a perfect collision of ambition, revenge, and loyalty tested to the breaking point. The morning after the launch party, Genoa City woke up buzzing. The glossy social media posts from the night before had been replaced by shaky cell phone videos of the tech glitch that revealed Abbott Communications' sensitive internal documents. The footage had gone viral, and within hours, gossip blogs were spinning stories about security breaches, corporate espionage, and potential lawsuits. For Sally Spectra, it felt like the floor had fallen out from under her. She sat at her kitchen table, still in her cocktail dress from the night before, hair pinned up from the party, laptop open to a half-dozen tabs, each one a damning headline. Her phone had been buzzing since dawn, alternating between calls from Billy, reporters, and worried colleagues. Billy's voice on the other end of the line was tense but calculated. Damage control, Sally. That's the priority. You get ahead of this before Jabot's lawyers start sniffing around. He didn't say it outright, but Sally could hear the unspoken threat. If she couldn't turn this around, she'd be out. Meanwhile, in the sleek penthouse overlooking the city, Kane Ashby poured himself a coffee and watched the coverage with a smirk. The glitch had worked even better than he'd imagined, sowing doubt, embarrassing the Abbotts, and giving him leverage he could use later. He was careful not to gloat too openly, even with himself. The key to playing a long game in Genoa City was patience. What Kane didn't expect was an early morning knock at his door. When he opened it, Nick Newman stood there, jaw tight, eyes full of accusation. "You did that," Nick said flatly, stepping into the apartment without waiting for an invitation. Kane leaned against the counter, unbothered. "Did what, exactly? Last I checked, I was just a guest enjoying some champagne and bad music." "Don't play games with me," Nick snapped. "You think I don't know when I'm being used? That stunt last night was about making me look like I'm in on it. You wanted the Abbotts to see us talking and put the pieces together." Kane's smirk widened. "Nick, I think you're giving yourself too much credit. You're not the star of every story. Nick took a step closer, his voice dropping to a dangerous low. If you drag me into one of your schemes again, I'll make sure every door in this city slams shut on you. Kane didn't flinch. I think we both know you're too busy playing your daddy's errand boy to follow through. The tension between them was thick enough to cut with a knife, but before Nick could respond, his phone buzzed with a call from Victor. He shot Kane one last warning look before leaving. At the Newman ranch, Victor was in full command mode. He had already summoned Nick, Victoria, and Nikki to discuss the fallout. Nikki's expression was icy, her disapproval written in every line of her face. She'd spent the night replaying their argument at the party, and nothing about the morning's headlines had softened her stance. This isn't business anymore, Victor, she said. You've dragged our family into a public mess, and for what? To poke at Jack Abbott. Victor dismissed her concern with a wave of his hand. This is about leverage. Jack made his choices, and now he will live with the consequences. Nick, still raw from his exchange with Kane, chimed in. You want leverage? Great. But don't make me your front man for a sabotage job I didn't sign up for. Victoria, meanwhile, was only half listening. Her mind was on Nate Hastings, who hadn't returned her call after the party. She suspected Claire had something to do with it. The thought of her daughter interfering in her personal life was infuriating, but also not entirely surprising. And she was right. Across town, Claire was enjoying a quiet breakfast at Crimson Lights, scrolling through her phone. She'd already received confirmation. Nate had confronted Audra late last night about the kiss with Kyle. The fight had apparently gone nuclear, ending with Nate walking out and Audra left fuming. Claire felt a satisfaction she hadn't experienced in years. Every lesson Jordan had drilled into her about exploiting weakness was paying off. Audra, however, wasn't going to take the hit quietly. She showed up at Society mid-morning, where she knew she'd find Kyle having coffee. Sliding into the booth across from him, she didn't bother with pleasantries.